Hey, good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Charlie Mike Webinar Series 2022, hosted by the National Veteran Small Business Coalition. Thank you for joining us today. We'd like to thank our sponsors, BAA Systems and Philips North America, for making this webinar series possible. All right, today's webinar is scheduled for 1 hour. Due to the importance of this subject, this may go an hour and a half. We'll let you all to disable your mics, and this webinar is being recorded, and the recording and the slides will go to all attendees by Mondays. If you have any questions during this presentation, the mics will be open and you can ask our speaker. And I'd like to say hello again. My name is Earl Morgan. I am the Program Director for the National Veteran Small Business Coalition. And I would like to welcome our special guest, Mr. Scott Semple. He is the founder and managing partner of NewTHINK Solutions, a DC Metro-based small business growth consulting and M&A advisory firm. Scott brings 25 plus years of knowledge and experience in the small business strategy and operations in the federal government marketplace. Scott has served as senior business executive, entrepreneur, technologist, and strategic advisor to the federal and commercial clients globally. Scott also serves as the director of national events and training for the National Veteran Small Business Coalition, the nation's largest nonprofit organization dedicated to advancing business opportunities for veterans and entrepreneurs serving the federal government contractors. Scott received his BS from Cornell University and an MS in finance from Johns Hopkins University, where he served as facility member and board advisor for over 20 years. Scott, my friend, I'd like to welcome you to Charlie Mike, and I will pass the floor to you.
Outstanding. And thank you, Earl, as always. Earl is the standard bearer for NVSBC, and we're always thrilled to have Earl with us. So thank you. If I could ask everybody to cut their camera off. I'm getting somebody's picture here. And so if you could turn off your mic and your camera. And Charles, that includes you. That way we can proceed with the presentation today. So let me check and make sure. All right, Earl, you can see my video? You can see my screen?
I can see your screen. Yes, I can.
All right, great. Hey, thanks everybody for participating today. This is a really important topic and tremendous amount of information to cover. And Earl will let the other people into the meeting. We will talk. I'll present here for about 45 minutes or so, and I know we'll reserve 10 or 15 minutes at the end for Q&A. Because there is a heck of a lot of information here. Let me also say, as a safe harbor statement up front, I've studied this topic in depth. I've worked with the absolute domain experts, both from federal agencies and got information from people like Larry Stubblefield and others from the SBA. Also worked with my esteemed colleagues, most notably Mark Goldschmidt, who knows a heck of a lot more about this topic than I think all of us combined. And so I think most of the information here is accurate, but I will also say this is a little bit of a moving target. Things are still being defined. This is a brand new program, and so there's an awful lot of information yet to be finalized. But I think it's a very important issue that we understand not just what is being implemented in the law, but what the market impact of CVE transfer is all about. So we all have different levels of understanding of this topic. So let's start with a couple of slides that really that kind of give us all kind of a standard background on the topic. So first and foremost, SDVOSB certification transfer from VA to SBA. Hey, what's happening? Number one, there's a new lead agency. the SDVOSB certification transfers from VA to SBA in 32 days. So the old familiar CVE crest that you see there does fade, and the new SBA crest for SDVOSB certification will be announced, Mark tells me, pretty soon. So that's a significant thing. The transfer will take place in about 32 days on January 1. Number two, it's a new set of rules. Auspicious that today, just this morning, I received information that the new regulations, the new FAR regulation, was published just this morning, and that is 13 CFR 128, which replaces 13 CFR 125, which I believe has been in place for about 14 years. It's the set of regulations that has guided the VA certification program throughout its history. So that's a significant issue. New set of rules are in place, published just today. So auspicious time for our meeting today. Third, it's a new set of enforcement. What do I mean by that? Well, these regulations establish that all agencies, not just VA, all agencies have to require certification for all SDVOSB awards effective with the implementation of the program, January 1. So a lot of regulations and things like that. Let's look at a quick fact sheet. And I apologize up front. This is a little bit of a blurry slide because I did a screenshot of a set of information that you can get anytime from the NVSBC.org website. If you search there for a set of information called Vet Fed Certify, this provides you the latest information and updates on veteran small business certification. This is just a quick update that, again, Mark Goldschmidt helped guide. He and I put this together. A set of facts about what this really means. Fact number one, like we said, SDVOSB government certification starts January 1 of 23, and that's per the NDAA, 2021 NDAA. Fact number two, the VA certification programs, the CVE program we all know, they stopped accepting applications on October 24th. And that was to allow time to process the 600 or 700 apps that were in process as of that time and get those completed by the end of December. Then at that point, then the SBA new SDVOSB certification program will begin accepting applications. Fact number three, and this is very important, these new government-wide SDVOSB certification program rules, they apply to all SDVOSB sole source and set-aside awards from all federal agencies. Yep, DOD, DHS, HHS, Department of Energy, everybody, all 24 agencies that comply with the SBA set-aside program. The bolded part is really important. The federal contracting officers can only award SDVOSB sole source and set-aside contracts to firms that are SDVOSB certified. So, and we'll talk about some details of this in a minute. There is a 1-year grace period for some self-designated SDVOSB firms. We'll talk about this in detail. Fact four, the new SDVOSB certification program simplifies the initial document submission requirements and it streamlines the review process for most applicants. So, a couple of use cases here. So, my veteran-owned business is VA certified today. So, what does this mean? Fact: your current VA-issued CVE verification is considered to be an SBA SDVOSB certification through your current CVE expiration date. And in addition to that, the SBA Administrator Guzman, has indicated that she is going to grant, that SBA will grant, a one-time extension of 1 year to all certifications, all current VA CVE certifications will be extended for 1 year. So if you were going to expire in February of 23, don't freak out, because your certification now is good through February of 24 and all other corresponding years and months. So you're good for 1 extra year. And then prior to that expiration of your current CVE, you're going to apply for recertification through the SBA, not through the VA. That program terminates in 32 days. So what if your business is not currently VA certified? Well, fact, to be eligible for SDVOSB sole source and set aside awards, your firm must receive certification through the SBA certification program. There's a 1-year grace period for some currently self-certified firms, and we'll talk about that next here. But specific guidance on the eligibility for that 1-year grace period is still forthcoming. So we're looking for that guidance. Okay. Third box here is kind of important. So what does self-certification as an SDVOSB really mean? What does it mean? Well, the fact is that when you check the SDVOSB box on your SAM registration, and then you subsequently apply for SDVOSB set-aside solicitations, you are confirming that your firm is in full compliance, okay, with the requirements stated in the previous 13 CFR 125, or now the newly published 13 CFR 128. And we'll talk about what those requirements are in the next slide. Okay. So the thing that people forget is that when you check that box, if you scroll down, there's a bunch of fine print. So that's the SAM reps and certs. And it requires, among other things, that your business is unconditionally owned and controlled by a service-disabled veteran and is a small business under the NAICS codes of the solicitation. So, you know, that begs the question. So what really is required? So 13 CFR 128 is not a significant deviation from 125. It has fundamentally the same 4 core components. You need to be a small business according to the size standards. You need to be at least 51% owned and controlled by 1 or more service-disabled veterans. And you have to have 1 or more service-disabled veteran managing the day-to-day operations, and those people need to really be making the long-term decisions of the firm. And this is fourth bullet is really important. Eligible veterans have to have a service-connected disability. So you have to have a service disability rating to qualify. That's a requirement. And this is the enforcement part of the new set of requirements. That is, more people are going to be looking at this. Okay, so that's the rules. That's what's happening. That's quick 13 minutes of the background. Okay, what's the market impact? What really happens next? Well, that's what's fascinating. 3 quick facts. Fact number 1, today there's 47,000 firms that qualify to submit bids for SDVOSB set-aside solicitations. That's because there's 47,000 firms, roundabout, that check the box on their SAM registration. In 32 days, that number drops to around 12,000 when only CVE verified firms qualify to submit a bid on an SDVOSB set-aside solicitation. Okay, there's an asterisk there because in addition to the 12,000 certified firms, there's firms that qualify for the grace period of 1 year. Okay, what's the real impact of that? Well, the new CVE regulations can result in an up to 75% reduction in your competition, but only if you know where to compete. And that's what we're going to talk about. Second fact, up to 60% of the around $32 billion a year in awards will likely shift from non-CVE firms to CVE verified firms. That's just a fundamental fact. The awards will only go to firms that have a certification. Now, I said CVE verified firms. Of course, what I mean is firms that are either legacy VA CVE verified firms or firms that become certified under the new SBA program. What's the real impact of this? Well, the transfer of CVE from VA to SBA causes the most significant and disruptive event of any of the 4 small business categories in the history of federal small business programs. Pretty confident that that's a safe statement. This is a very, very disruptive, not saying it's a bad thing, it's actually an extremely good thing, but it is also a market disruption. And this entire presentation is simply helping you understand you have a business strategy. Your strategy needs to change because of these rules. If you dabble in or are deeply in the SDVOSB marketplace, your market changed and you need to build that into your business plans. Fact 3, every federal contract vehicle other than a VA vehicle has non-CVE SDVOSB firms as prime contract awardees. Well, no kidding, because it was not a requirement. So this includes the existing OASIS, not the new OASIS Plus, existing OASIS, ITES 3S, VETS 2, SOUP, Seaport, MASS. Every major VA vehicle has non-CVE firms as primes. So what's the real impact? Well, these non-CVE firms will lose their prime seats if they do not become certified. And CVE firms that get ahead of this shift can experience significant inorganic growth. In other words, acquiring new parts of your existing marketplace. All right, let's take a look at these facts in detail. If I can, there we go. So these new regulations being implemented, they really redefine and reshape in fact, it's closer to a $35 billion a year federal SDVOSB set-aside marketplace. And understanding the real impact of these CVE rule changes is important not just to SDVOSB firms. It is important to all of the market participants, and it's important that you prepare for and position your firm for these changes. Well, who are market participants? Well, obviously, CVE verified SDVOSBs and firms that will become SBA certified SDVOSB firms. You need to take action now to position your firm for expansion through organic and inorganic growth strategies. That's what we'll talk about. For non-CVE or self-designated SDVOSB firms, step number 1, you have to take action now to either qualify for CVE verification, or rather, I need to change that slide, to qualify for SBA certification, or you need to evaluate options to monetize and maximize the value of your firm's assets. In other words, if you know your firm is not able to get to SBA certification, that's fine. You have assets that have value. You need to think about that and figure out, what do you do with those prime contract seats? What do you do with those BPAs or multiple year awards that you're not going to qualify for the option years on? That's an important consideration. Third category, large government primes. A lot of large government primes have subcontracts with firms who are not CVE or not verified. Those need to be rethought, and you need to develop subcontracting and teaming strategies to position with verified firms now for upcoming solicitations, including OASIS Plus. Mentors, we'll talk about this one in detail, but mentors really need to rethink their protege market positioning and their strategy and make sure that they're taking the change of the marketplace into account. And finally, investors and joint ventures need to rethink your SDVOSB market, JV, and joint venture strategy to curate investments. In other words, if you're an investor, you need to think about what you could acquire to put into a portfolio firm. That's an important consideration. You didn't used to be able to think about this, but there are firms that will likely be there are contract vehicles that will be readily available because of the changes that are about to take place. It may also accelerate some exits and increase the returns on certain types of investment assets. So what does this mean to you as an individual firm? Well, let's take a look at the real impact. So what's written in stone, as we talked about, CVE transfers as of January 1. It establishes that all agencies, all 24 agencies, have to require certification for all new SDVOSB awards starting in January of 23. And it requires that existing awardees of SDVOSB set-aside revenue become certified by the end of that 1-year grace period, or there's a potential of losing your existing revenue stream. That's a fact. So what's the real impact for you? Total game changer. Okay, these new rules say that 23 federal agencies that only required self-designation to qualify for set-asides, they now will be requiring verification, or SBA certification. That's the new rule of the land. New players, 60% or so of SDVOSB awards are going to shift. Why? Well, we'll show you in the next couple of slides, but the focus clearly is on certified firms, which have not been receiving the bulk of SDVOSB awards. The bulk of awards have been going to self-designated firms. So CVE really becomes the new hot ticket for awards, for mentor-protege, and for investment. This creates new opportunities. Firms that get ahead of this shift and implement organic and inorganic strategies to embrace CVE are going to slingshot past their competitors. That's just a fact. So numbers always talk a lot better than words. So let's take a look at numbers. So usually this left-hand axis, the y-axis, that's usually dollars. That's this time on this slide, this isn't dollars. This is actually numbers of individual SDVOSB firms that received one or more awards at a particular agency. So what the blue bar says is there's about 4,600 firms that received one or more SDVOSB set-aside award at DoD. The red box is the Veterans Administration. Then it tails off to Department of Homeland Security, Health and Human Services, and Department of Energy. So that's about 11,000 firms overall. Okay, and obviously this includes CVE firms, right? The history, and self-designated firms. So the question is, how many of these firms are impacted by CVE transfer? And it's an interesting number. So we actually did the analytics. Now, caveat, again, safe harbor up front here, okay? The actual numbers are impossible to tell yet, but it's a safe bet that and my research actually demonstrates that within DoD, for example, of the 4,600 firms that received an SDVOSB set-aside, we found less than 500 that are CVE verified. Now, I'm sure there are more than that, but it's kind of difficult to ferret it out. But for sure, it's a heck of a lot less than 4,600 firms. So somewhere in here, there's a lot of firms that are currently under contract who won't qualify for future contracts. Right? The red bar here is the same. Right? Well, no kidding. That's because the VA, the red bar, right, had about 3,400 firms, SDVOSBs, under contract, and and they are 100% CVE verified. That was a requirement at the VA. All right. So the message of this slide is that the majority of SDVOSB set-asides, 2 out of 3 set-aside awards, go to non-CVE firms. That's an interesting piece of market research that we did. That's about 7,000 firms that no longer qualify to bid on SDVOSB solicitations in less than 32 days. My slide isn't up to date. VA also represents about 66% of all awards across the government given to CVE. That's a very interesting piece of research that came out of GovWin, directly off of one of their slides. And actually, I should put that attribution in there. This means that the majority of non-VA SDVOSB awards have been to non-CVE firms. So what's the real impact? The SDVOSB marketplace is about to experience a huge transition, and the 7,000 firms must either qualify, the 7,000 firms that are self-designated on this slide, these boxes here, they need to either get CVE verified or think about their alternative strategies. One quick sidebar as well. Right now, the SDVOSB set-aside level is at 3%. There's a possibility that in the future, maybe even next year, that 3% might rise. If it goes up, that just compounds this issue. In other words, agencies will need to comply with a higher requirement, 4%, 5%, who knows, set aside for SDVOSBs at the same time that the available supply of qualified SDVOSB firms will be going down significantly in number. This all has to be a part of your business strategy. It's how we all grow. All right, so that's the real impact and hopefully helpful to you. Right, one slide that kind of snapshots the whole thing here. Okay, so there's two big events. In 32 days, January 1 of 23, the SDVOSB set-aside solicitations go from 47,000 qualified firms down to 12,000. And I'm sorry. How did that happen? Am I still there, Earl? You got me?
Yeah, I still have you.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
All right. That was weird. Anyway,
It was.
January 1, the number of qualified firms goes down because the requirement is to be CVE verified or SBA certified to be eligible for an award. Plus, as it says here, plus firms that are eligible for the grace period. Once we get definition on exactly which firms qualify for the grace period. The second big change is, as of the end of 23, regardless of what else happens, the grace period's done at the end of 23. So going into 24, you have to be certified, either by legacy from the VA CVE certification or under the new SBA certification program. Okay. Either way, you got to be certified by one of those two processes to be eligible for a new award or for an option year on your existing award. So it really does kind of beg the question, what is your CVE focused business growth strategy? I want to emphasize that phrase because I'm not sure everybody's got that into their DNA yet. All right. What's your business growth strategy? That's one thing. What is your CVE focused business growth strategy? That's a really different thing. All right. That incorporates these kind of changes. All right. Well, what do I need to think about? And how does this impact your firm? Where's the growth opportunity, pal? All right. That's what we get asked a lot at NewTHINK. And it's an interesting question. So you got to understand how CVE impacts your organic and inorganic growth strategies through this transition period we'll call 23 to 25. All right. What changes? Well, think about it this way. And I'm sorry, if you could please mute your microphone, that would be appreciated. So think about it this way. What contracting relationships are impacted or could be impacted by this CVE transfer? Well, does it impact existing prime vehicles? Does it impact future prime vehicles? Does it impact subcontract awards? Does it impact mentor-protege, joint ventures? What about TAs and NDAs and employee agreements? Well, guess what? Because 75% of SDVOSB firms are self-designated and not CVE or SBA certified, all of these relationships are impacted, all of them. So we don't have time for all of them. So we'll take a quick look at 3 of these. And specifically, let's take a quick look at existing prime vehicle awards and the impact of this CVE transfer, future prime vehicle awards, and mentor-protege partnerships, right? Well, existing vehicles, holy catfish, where do you start? With BIC vehicles, did you know there's 38 BIC vehicles? I thought there were like 4. There's 38 BIC vehicles. Then there's tons of non-BIC contract vehicles. There's SDVOSB only vehicles, right? PAX 2, VETS 2, a limited number, but there are SDVOSB only vehicles. And then, of course, a ton of SDVOSB swim lanes on the major contract vehicles. Well, how do you even get your arms around what the impact is? Well, the way we did it is the following. We identified all the current contracts that have an SDVOSB contract awardee as a criteria. Then we retained a data analytics firm to identify all SDVOSB firms on every one of those vehicles. Yep, that was a lot of work. Then we validated which of those SDVOSB firms are CVE and which ones are self-designated. So this is a lot of research. Research is ongoing, but the results thus far indicate a significant, I guess, problem, or better for the market participants to get ahead of this, a unique market opportunity for first movers. And just a quick example. So we literally went through every vehicle. This is NASA soup, right? We went through every vehicle. We found the contract holders, vendors, companies, okay, their contract number, when does their contract end, and figured out if they're CVE. That was a lot of work for every single vehicle. Oasis, this is the list of all the vehicles that we did. All right. So, without getting into excruciating detail, here's a quick summary. If you look at the vehicles, just the top 10, there's about 2,100 firms, SDVOSB firms, that have a prime seat on our favorite vehicles. Of those, about 40% are CVE verified. About 40% are non-CVE. Okay, the average is around 46% actually are not CVE. Okay, let's just say 50-50. Okay, so in other words, on every vehicle, there's a whole bunch of firms that are not CVE. So they're not going to qualify going forward as participants for new set-aside work, even on existing vehicles. That's a shift. And that shift doesn't just apply to these existing vehicles. It's these new vehicles, okay? And there was a lot of question and answer on the Polaris solicitation that just went in on 18 November, a week ago. And there was a lot of Q&A in the lead up to the Polaris submission about who's going to qualify for the SDVOSB swim lane or the small business swim lane. I think some of that has yet to be determined. The same issue is going to apply to Oasis. That is, because the awards are going to be made after the implementation of 13 CFR 128, which is a government-wide FAR implementation. How does that impact these new solicitations? So that's something that needs to be determined. This is also going to impact other huge multi-billion-dollar ceiling programs like SOUP 6. It also is going to affect SDVOSB set-aside programs like PAX 3. Matter of fact, we did some research and figured out there's 22 new or recompete vehicles just in the next 24 months that are either SDVOSB only or have an SDVOSB swim lanes. So with fewer firms, and this goes right back to what I was saying a few slides ago, with fewer firms there, what is your certification specific, your SDVOSB certification strategy for these new vehicles? Does it change how you approach qualifying for these vehicles? Does it change how you approach assembling your team? Because we all know you don't go into these vehicles alone, you go in with partners. Who are your partners going to be? And how attractive are you because you are CVE verified or you get the new SBA certification, right? How does that impact your attractiveness in the marketplace? The indications that we've been given is that you get the beauty queen CVE firms or verified firms definitely get the high points, get the attractive look from large partners, as they go into these new teaming opportunities for the future vehicles. So part one, existing vehicles, very significant impact. Future vehicles, an even bigger impact, because it changes our whole strategy about teaming and how you qualify for the 95,000 points as it was in Polaris, or the other vehicle point values that are going to be coming up. So just a quick snapshot of what we do as a company, and I'll explain NewTHINK towards the end of the conversation just briefly, but something you need to build into your growth strategy. You need to think about this differently. All right, if you are working in federal agencies today, here's a safe bet. I don't care if it's VA or DOD or what agency, it is very, very likely that the contracting officer or officers who you know, and by the way, there's 10,000 of them in the federal government, about 10,000 certified, qualified contracting officers, people that can obligate the federal government. Okay, it's a safe bet that they're not current with these rules and regulations and the speed with which this whole thing happened. So if I were you, it would be a good idea to contact all your current agency contracting officers that are responsible for awards in your NAICS code and discuss what's happening. Let them know and identify that you are CVE verified, and that make sure that the CO is aware of all of your NAICS and skills, right? More than likely, the contracting officer that you're dealing with on 1 or 2 or 5 contracts, they have probably for every one that you were awarded, they've probably made awards for 10 or 100 other awards that you either didn't even know about or that you competed for and it went to another competitor. Make sure those contracting officers are aware of all of your skills, all of your qualifications, and the fact that you're a CVE verified firm in good standing with good CPARs, and that you're the firm to go to as a reliable and proven commodity for the services that agency needs. So you want to review all the awards that you lost also to SDVOSBs and confirm their CVE status. Easy to do. The VIP database is sitting right there. That's where we got all our data. All right. And take a look at the contract pop and figure out when that piece of work that you competed for and lost to a competitor who's not CVE verified, when's that coming up for recompete? I think I'd want to get in line on that. Also, research other vehicles that are used by your agency and identify if SDVOSB primes are CVE verified or not. Just a quick snapshot. Obviously, there's 100 different things you could be doing, right? 4 quick identified items here that sort of summarize. You got to be very aggressive about this. You need to look at your marketplace differently. Not everyone that you've been competing with in the past is someone you are going to be competing with in the future. And that's a safe statement. This also kind of begs some thinking about a category of growth that most smalls don't give themselves the luxury of thinking about. If you're a large mid, $500 million or above large federal contractor, a GovCon, you've got 2 books of growth: organic growth and inorganic growth. Organic, I'm going to grow by busting our tails and getting more business at this agency and that agency. But I'm also going to grow my company by buying something, a vehicle, a competitor, another piece of business, a new line of work. Those are inorganic strategies. All right. With a change like this, it's really time to stop and think about the vehicles that are frequently used to acquire your firm's NAICS or your firm's skills and the NAICS codes that you provide, and engage an advisor to discuss potential acquisitions. Think about it. Submitting for any new upcoming contract is an expensive deal. All right. I don't care if it's Polaris, Oasis Plus, an on-ramp. It's an expensive process. You can spend hundreds of thousands of dollars assembling that proposal. And, you got to go all in on that calculation, by the way. In other words, you have to add in the time of the executive team that was dedicated to assembling that proposal. That's a cost. We tend to forget that because, you're the owner and you don't think about your cost being built into the cost. You just think about hiring Wolf Den or, somebody to help write the proposal, somebody to help you with the price to win strategy. It's not just the external costs, it's your internal cost. All right. Think about that in the context of, if I go all in on this next solicitation, I'm going to be in for $500,000. Can I buy a vehicle? Don't know. Can I buy a vehicle for that same amount of money? The thing that really impacts that decision is think about your P-win. All right. You submit on a new federal solicitation. Your P-win is probably somewhere between 0 and 10%. Just reality. All right. There's hundreds, maybe thousands of competitors on any solicitation. If you go after a company as an acquisition candidate, either a contract as an asset purchase or APA, or to acquire a company, your level of assurance rises well above 10%. So that's just something to consider. So you want to think about and also identify non-CVE mentor protege and joint venture teams and how you strategize that and engage with those firms. All right. Next topic, just real quickly, mentor protege. Well, it's a great term. Let's take a look at the numbers. Currently, there's 1,502 approved SBA mentor protege teams. And actually, that was as of the 1st of April. I haven't updated this slide, apologize. But the numbers haven't changed that much, I can guarantee you. As of that date, there were of the 1,500 SBA teams, 457 of those teams were with SDVOSB firms as proteges. Interesting statistic, less than 40% of these proteges are CVE verified, and that includes the JVs. So again, we did the research, we know 60% of the MP teams are with self-designated non-CVE firms. Kind of a, prognostication on my part, but I'm betting that a relatively low percentage of the mentors are aware that their protege investment is down the tubes. So CVE strategies that you build into your company as a mentor, you got to rethink or NewTHINK your position on mentor protege. Secondly, CVE verified SDVOSB firms. What's your value to your mentor? I think your teaming agreement should have a number that's a little higher than it used to have, right? Because you are a CVE verified firm. And investors, time to rethink or NewTHINK your portfolio firms in your MP value proposition. So these are some of the overall strategies that you think about. Big picture. So what's the real impact here? All right. The real impact of CVE transfer for an organic growth strategy perspective is, what are your current vehicles? What are the future vehicles that you think you need to bid on, and how you're going to bid and team on those vehicles? What current agencies are you serving, and which new agencies should you be serving that may in fact be a little more available to you now? Thinking perhaps DOD, that might be an available target, whereas you had not looked at that before because they were accepting everybody who checked a box on SAM. Not so much anymore. And how do you think about this in the context of pipeline expansion? Inorganic strategies then include vehicle purchase or APAs, all right, competitor acquisitions. Now, if you got a competitor out there that's beating the tar out of you and they're not CVE verified, you need to take a look at that. Joint ventures, that's a whole new strategy alignment based upon CVE verification and the qualification for certain pieces of work. And then mentor protege, as we talked about, that's a whole different animal, and it really takes on a different context. The big message here is you need to prepare your firm now for the confusion and the opportunities that lie ahead. Favorite phrase of mine from good old Samuel Longhorn Clemens, Mark Twain, said, "The fishing's good when the river's muddy." Well, folks, the river has never been muddier. I can tell you that. So what do we do? So just real quickly, what we do at NewTHINK is we help you think through this. We help, you know what your core competencies are. You know what your organic growth strategies are, right? we help you think through two categories of growth strategies outside your normal organic growth, right? And that is non-financial inorganic growth strategies, meaning tactical and opportunistic partnerships, strategic partnerships, mentor-protege partnerships, right? These generally don't require financial investment, as well as financial inorganic growth strategies, meaning joint ventures, asset purchase, contract vehicles, or merger and acquisition. So we do that through a sequence, a logical process of helping you analyze what your market opportunity is, and then leading those initiatives that are most focused on your firm. NewTHINK is a firm that provides, as Earl said up front, management advisory services primarily focused on growth for the small and mid-cap marketplace. And obviously, we're pretty intimate with the SDVOSB changes and what's taken place and the opportunities. So we look at growth strategies during CVE transfer, M&A strategy development and execution, pre and post acquisition, integration and planning, enterprise strategic planning and OKR-based plan development, and federal market strategies, agency and contract positioning. And that's with my good partner, Phil Panzarella, and I and other partners that work together to help you build your company. So we're at about the 45-minute point. And Earl, if you're still there, maybe we open it up for a couple of questions. And
I'm still here. What are you talking about?
Hey, I never know about you, Earl. You know, I gotta check in on you, pal. You know,
I'm getting old. I'm starting to fall asleep a lot lately. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and open everybody's mic. If you give me a minute here to open the mics, and we could start asking questions. Okay, we got a question from Dan. Dan will go ahead and share your screen, Scott. They want to see your contact information again on screen.
Sure, I can do that. Right there, Scott.Semple at NewTHINK.
Wait a minute.
Oh, you there, Earl?
I'm here. Yes.
There we go. Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, sorry. I had my mic turned off there for a second.
Okay.
So it's Scott.Semple at NewThinkSolutions.com.
All right. If you have any questions, you could type them on a chat. Charles said thank you. So everybody, if you have any questions, type them in the chat or wait until I open everybody's mic.
I don't know, Earl. Either we did a great job today and answered all the questions, or everybody already knew all this information. I can't tell which.
Or people are just shy.
You did a great job, Scott.
All right, who do I owe money to out there? Thank you. Hey, Mark Goldschmidt, I see your hand up.
Oh, that was to say you owe money to me.
I always owe you money, Mark. Any comments, Mark, on any additional thoughts? And for those who don't know Mark Goldschmidt is one of the most authoritative guys I have ever met in the world of SDVOSB qualification, certification. He has donated more hours to helping firms become certified to the VA program over, what, 10 years than anybody I've ever met.
More like about 15 going on 20.
There we go.
Since the beginning of the program. It's been an interesting challenge and push. You know, so I think Scott did a really good job of talking about really the impact of what all this is going to mean. And when you get into the marketplace, the significant impact it's going to have. So, you know, I've been through some of the processes that Scott has suggested, recommended, and you really need help with guys like Scott when you're going through them the first time, because if you go through it without help, it ain't fun. But they do make for good stories for your grandkids.
Yeah. So, Mark, we'll dialogue since other people are being shy here. What's your thought, Mark, on the level of awareness out in the DoD world and in the HHS world and in the the contracting officers, the program offices? What's your level of what's your thought on their level of awareness of these changes?
I think it's like every change that's of this magnitude. The Weather Service has been predicting the hurricane for 2 weeks, and most of the people out there are going to be surprised when it hits and lands ashore.
Yeah, yeah, and unfortunately, the only option is to go into the basement and hide, and in this case, that doesn't help you so much.
No, I think it's some of the analyses were interesting. Particularly looking at how many contracts are there, how many of the large contracts have potential issues with non-CVE or non-verified, non-certified firms, and watching in the next 6 months how that's going to play out. I think, the one that you had up there at the top, the that's 2 is up for recertification it's imminent. So I think it's February, which doesn't give you a lot of time to do stuff. And if you're caught unawares, I'm not sure how GSA is going to treat that, even if you have applied for SBA certification.
Yep. Hey, Mark, we got a couple other questions here that you might be able to help with. Ms. Tomlin asks, has the SBA posted a website to restart the app process?
Not yet. And I need to know what you mean by restart. Because, there's the app process currently in place with CVE that stopped taking applications on October 24th.
Right.
I know they had a large number of applications. I believe they're going to be able to get through all of them before January 1st. After January 1st, there'll be a new website created. So I wouldn't expect it would carry forward from a continuation of an application from CVE, but it will start to address, with the 1-year grace period. You shouldn't have to worry about a recertification. And if it's going to be a new certification, that's going to start in January.
Yep. And then Jaquel also asked, what are the options if you were in process for your review of CVE and it is not approved before the transfer to SBA? I think you just answered that. I mean, the VA's position from everything that they have stated is that they will clean up the backlog and everybody that was in process will be either approved or denied by 12/31/22, correct?
That's my understanding. And I think my understanding is it'll happen well before that. But
Yep.
I don't know. I have not seen the numbers or the details. I think that they started with something like 1,150 or 1,170 applications.
Okay.
And that they brought that down a lot. I'll probably see numbers later this week as to where there are, but my understanding of what the numbers are, they will get completed in a reasonable amount of time, well before the 31st.
Good.
That goes under famous last words, right?
Yeah, really. There was another question we had. What is the date of your research for the 7,000 firms that are only self-certified? And in fact, it's not 7,000. There are 47,000 firms that are self-certified. The source of that is SAM, the SAM database, and actually either combination, either the SAM database or the SBA DSBS database. We use both those sources as well as other sources. So there's 47,000 firms that essentially check the box, if you will, to say, yes, I am SDVOSB verified. There are only 12,000 CVE firms in the VIP, the VA VIP database. So 47,000 say that are self-designated, 12,000 that are currently VA CVE verified. So there's a delta of about 35,000 firms, about 2/3 of the market, if you will, that either have to seek certification or seek shelter.
And Scott, as a brief clarification, most of those 35,000 are VOSBs.
Okay, great. Thank you. Another question from Heather, where did you source the data? Oh, regarding the number of mentor protege firms off the SBA site. The SBA publishes the document, has a database of the firms that are currently approved in the SBA program. And as stated, effective for 1 of this year, April 1, there were 1,502. But that information is readily available to you out on the SBA site. You just Google mentor protege and it'll pop right up. What are the documents required? Here you go, Mark. This is right up your alley. What are the documents required by the SBA? Are the documents required by the SBA the same as the VA?
There will be a subset of what the VA requested. I think you can expect to submit fewer documents initially. And if after review there's clarification required, you may have to submit additional documents, but I think it's going to be much quicker, much simpler. You'll be able to see a demo of the system, I believe, next week. It's going to be a rollout. I'll have to get the date and time. I don't know the exact date and time. The archive documents will be all of the documentation at VA and all of the data at VA will be transferred over to SBA. Will be exported, I think. I have to check on the exact, but all of those documents will be available.
All right.
And I don't know what you mean to complete the process, but the essentially the system will be complete and start testing with pilot. There's been user acceptance tests for the external part. The user acceptance test for the back end will start soon, and a full pilot with a number of applicants will start, I think, in about 2 weeks, give or take a couple days.
Terrific.
Now, for a significant fee to Scott, you can apply for that. I'm kidding.
Yeah, look up. We got somebody had their hand raised. Chris, I'm gonna go ahead and spotlight you.
Yeah.
And you go ahead and ask away.
Yeah. Hey, Scott. Hey, Mark. So I've been helping a big SDVOSB manufacturer based out of the South with a big government contract for the past few months. But they've never actually, on SAM.gov, they've never self-certified and they've never gone through the CVE verification process. But the RFP is likely going to drop like in the next month or 2. But the thing is we can't wait till January 1st for the SBA verification. So I'm not sure what you recommend. If there's a way where we could still submit to the VA, or should we just self-certify on SAM.gov in the meantime? I don't know.
I have to apologize, Chris. I could not. It was something with my headset. I could not understand the question. It sounded like you were in a barrel to me.
Basically, Marquis is saying they're in a they want to compete for something that's coming up in the next month or 2, and they're not CV verified currently. What should they do? Well, the SBA, the SAM registration still allows you to self-certify as of today. So the recommendation that's been provided by the SBA is to go ahead and self-certify, and thereby qualify for the grace period of a year. I'm not sure if you've seen any further updates to that, Mark, but that was the last information I had seen.
No, you'll be able to maintain the self-certification I recommend you apply for SBA as soon as it's available for applications, so you've got that in the system. I think some of the stuff that Scott mentioned, my understanding of the new regulations, and I published a link to it a little bit earlier. I can publish that again if you'd like, but my understanding is you can't be awarded a contract that's an SDVOSB sole source or competitive award set aside unless you're certified. So you want to have the self-certification in there as well as apply for the certification through SBA.
Yep. I think the key to what Mark's saying is get in line as soon as that certification window opens for SBA. And in the meantime, take advantage of the self-certification, which is still available and at least will qualify you under the existing regulations. And last question here is what's the SBA email to track the processes? There's an SBA site that has a list mail that you can get added to. Oh boy, I don't have it right off the top of my head. I think it's CVE certification.SBA. That sound right, Mark?
I honestly don't know that one,
Yeah,
Scott.
I forget that one too.
You know,
Anyway,
from the nature of the question, I think those are details that I'll see about getting the team in SBA to push over to NVSBC that you can put in your little the vet certify, I think it is.
Yep. Yeah.
Newsletter.
And actually, that's a really good point, Mark. We published the October VetFed Certify. We will publish a December VetFed Certify. And thank you, Ms. Tomlin. We'll make sure that we include that link in that update. So we're at 2:00, and I think we had a productive session today. I really appreciate everybody's feedback, and we will follow up with you. If you have further questions, please direct them to Earl. And also, please do be sure to check the NVSBC website. Just a plug for NVSBC. If you're not currently a member, you really ought to be. These programs are brought to you by NVSBC. NVSBC is a 501c3 and 501c6 not-for-profit organization. We're the largest organization in the country that advocates for veteran opportunities, and it's the best $350 you can possibly invest to help grow your company. So with that, Earl, I'll let you wrap it up.
Okay. That was a buttload of information you just gave us today. So thank you, Scott, for volunteering your time and providing information. Mark, thank you for being our special guest star on this webinar.
No problem. I'm standing up taking a bow right now.
Okay. For everybody who's on this webinar, I will get the slide to you and the recording by Monday. So look out for your emails for that. So again, thank you all for joining us, and I hope to see you again on December 6th for the next Charlie Mike. Thank you all, and have a good week.